My daughter called me senile and took my house, so I made her homeless. Instead, I never thought I'd be sitting here at 73 years old, telling strangers on the internet about how my own daughter tried to steal everything from me. But here I am, and if you're listening to this, maybe you'll understand why I had to do what I did. Maybe you'll see that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. My name is Margaret, and this is the story of how I lost my daughter but saved my dignity. It's not a pretty story, and it doesn't have the ending you might expect, but it's real, and it's mine, and I need to tell it because keeping it inside was killing me slowly. I raised Sarah as a single mother after her father walked out when she was just 6 years old. I worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, cleaning offices at night and working at the diner during the day just to keep food on our table and a roof over our heads. I sacrificed everything for that girl. My social life, my chances at love, my dreams of going back to school. Everything I had went into making sure Sarah had what she needed. When she graduated high school, I was so proud I cried for 3 days straight. She was the first person in our family to go to college, and I worked overtime for 4 years to help pay for it, even taking out loans against my little house. The house that my grandmother left me, the only thing of value I'd ever owned. But I didn't care. Sarah was going to be somebody. She was going to have the life I never could. She became a lawyer, just like she always dreamed. Married a nice man named David, had 2 beautiful kids, Emma and little Jake. For a while there, I thought we were the perfect American family. Sarah would bring the grandkids over on Sundays and we'd have dinner together. I'd spoil them rotten, the way grandmothers are supposed to do. David was always respectful, always called me Mrs. Patterson even though I told him 100 times to call me Margaret. But something changed about 5 years ago. Sarah started getting impatient with me. If I repeated a story, she'd roll her eyes. If I forgot where I put my keys, she'd make comments about my age. Small things at first, things I tried to brush off because I love my daughter and I wanted to believe she was just stressed from work. Then came the incident that changed everything. I was backing out of my driveway after Sarah's visit, and I accidentally bumped into her car. It was nothing serious, just a tiny scratch on her bumper, but you would have thought I'd committed murder the way she reacted. "Mom, you can't be driving anymore," she said, her voice sharp and cold. "You're becoming a danger to yourself and others. We need to talk about some changes." Changes. That word haunted me for weeks after she said it. What kind of changes was my daughter planning for my life? I found out soon enough. Sarah started coming by more often, but not for the warm family visits we used to have. She'd walk through my house with this critical eye, making lists on her phone. She'd ask me questions about my finances, about my medications, about my daily routine. At first, I was touched. I thought she was finally taking an interest in my well-being. I was so naive. One Tuesday morning in October, Sarah showed up at my door with a stack of papers and that fake smile she'd perfected in law school. "Mom, I've been doing some research, and I think it's time we made some smart decisions about your future." She sat me down at my own kitchen table, the one where I'd helped her with homework for 12 years, and spread out these official-looking documents. "I've found you a wonderful senior living community," she said, like she was offering me a vacation. "It's got everything you need, meals, activities, medical care right on site. You won't have to worry about maintaining this big old house anymore." I stared at her, not understanding. "Sarah, honey, I don't want to leave my home. I'm fine here. I've been fine here for 40 years. That's when her mask slipped. Just for a second, but I saw it. The impatience, the frustration, the cold calculation in her eyes. "Mom, you're not fine. You're getting forgetful. You had that fender bender. Last week you called me 3 times asking if I was coming for dinner when we'd never made plans. You need more care than you can get living alone. I called you 3 times because my phone was acting up and I wasn't sure the calls were going through," I said, my voice getting stronger. "And I had 1 tiny accident in 50 years of driving. That doesn't make me senile, Sarah." She flinched when I used that word. Senile. But she pressed on with her presentation, showing me glossy brochures of smiling elderly people playing bingo and doing watercolor painting. "The best part is, we can sell this house and use the money to pay for your care. The housing market is really good right now, Mom. This place could sell for almost $400,000. $400,000. My little 3-bedroom house that I'd bought for $37,000 back in 1985. The house where I'd raised my daughter, where I'd nursed her through chickenpox and helped her get ready for prom. The house that held every memory I had of building a life from nothing. I don't want to sell my house, Sarah. Mom, be practical. You can't keep up with the maintenance. The roof needs work, the furnace is old, and you're spending money you don't need to spend when you could be getting professional care. Professional care. As if love and attention could be purchased by the hour. We argued for 2 hours that day. Sarah had an answer for everything, a logical reason why her plan was best. She'd already toured the facility. She'd already spoken to the director. She'd already calculated how long the money would last if we invested it properly. The only thing she hadn't done was ask me what I wanted. Finally, I told her to leave. I need time to think, I said, though I already knew my answer. I wasn't going anywhere. But Sarah wasn't giving up that easily. Over the next few weeks, she escalated her campaign. She started bringing David with her for backup. She had the grandkids ask me innocent questions about whether I was lonely living by myself. She even brought her friend Jennifer over, another lawyer, who just happened to mention how much easier it was to manage her mother's affairs once they'd moved her to assisted living. The breaking point came on a cold November morning. I was in my garden, cleaning up the last of the fall leaves, when I heard Sarah's voice from my kitchen. She had her own key, of course. I'd given it to her years ago for emergencies. But when I walked into my house, I found her sitting at my table with a man I'd never seen before. "Mom, this is Robert Chen," she said, without even looking up from the papers they were reviewing. "He's a realtor. I asked him to come take a look at the house and give us a market evaluation." I stood there in my own kitchen, dirt still on my hands from gardening, staring at this stranger who was making notes about my home like I wasn't even there. Something inside me snapped. "Get out," I said quietly. Sarah looked up, startled. "Mom, we're just trying to help you make informed decisions. Get out of my house, both of you, right now." The realtor, poor man, could sense the tension and started packing up his things immediately. But Sarah stayed seated, her jaw set in that stubborn way I remembered from when she was 5 years old and didn't want to go to bed. "Mom, you're being unreasonable. We're family. We need to plan for your future." "My future is not your decision to make," I said, my voice getting louder. "This is my house, and you had no right to bring a stranger here without asking me." That's when she said it, the words that changed everything between us forever. "Mom, you're clearly not capable of making rational decisions anymore. You're showing signs of dementia, and it's getting worse. Someone needs to take control of your affairs before you make a mistake that hurts everyone." Dementia. Not forgetful. Not getting older. Dementia. I looked at my daughter, this woman I'd sacrificed everything for, and I saw the truth in her eyes. She didn't want to help me. She wanted my house. She wanted control of my money. And she was willing to declare me mentally incompetent to get it. "Leave," I whispered, "and don't come back until you're ready to apologize." She stood up then, gathering her papers with sharp, angry movements. "Fine, but this conversation isn't over, Mom. I won't let you make decisions that could hurt you just because you're too proud to admit you need help." After she left, I sat in my quiet house and cried, not just because of what she'd said, but because of what I'd realized. My daughter had been planning this for months, maybe years. The increased visits, the questions about my finances, the comments about my memory. She'd been building a case against me, collecting evidence that I was unfit to manage my own life. But I wasn't going down without a fight. The next morning, I called my own lawyer. Jim Harrison had handled my divorce papers 20 years ago and helped me with my will. He was semi-retired now, but he agreed to see me that afternoon. "Margaret, I have to ask," Jim said after I'd explained the situation. "Are you having any memory problems? Any confusion or difficulty managing your daily activities?" I appreciated that he asked me directly instead of assuming. "Jim, I'm 73 years old. Sometimes I forget where I put my reading glasses, and they're on top of my head. Sometimes I can't remember if I took my blood pressure medication, so I have one of those daily pill organizers. I might tell the same story twice to the same person occasionally. But I balance my own checkbook, I manage my own medications, I drive safely, I cook my own meals, and I make my own decisions. Does that sound like dementia to you? He smiled. It sounds like being 73. But Margaret, if Sarah is serious about pursuing guardianship, you need to be prepared. Adult children can petition the court to have their parents declared incompetent, and if they can show evidence of declining mental capacity, a judge might agree. What kind of evidence? Medical records showing cognitive decline, testimony from people who've observed concerning behavior, documentation of financial mistakes or safety issues. The court's primary concern is protecting vulnerable adults, even if that means overriding their wishes. I felt sick. So she could actually take control of my life? It's possible, but it's not easy. You'd have the right to your own attorney, your own medical evaluation, and the chance to contest her claims. But Margaret, these cases can get ugly. Families tear apart over guardianship disputes. As if my family wasn't already tearing apart, I spent that night making my own plans. If Sarah wanted to play legal games, I could play too. But I had advantages she didn't know about. First, I'd been keeping meticulous records of my own. Every doctor's appointment, every medication, every bill I'd paid on time, every trip to the grocery store. I had a system, and I'd been using it for years because I never wanted to be the old lady who couldn't take care of herself. Second, I had allies Sarah didn't know about. My neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, had been watching out for me since her husband died 3 years ago. We checked on each other daily, shared meals sometimes, and she could testify that I was perfectly capable of independent living. Dr. Williams, my physician for the past 15 years, had just given me a clean bill of health at my annual physical 2 months ago, including cognitive screening. Third, and most importantly, I had something Sarah wanted badly enough to betray me for, and that gave me power. I didn't hear from Sarah for 3 weeks after our fight. Part of me hoped she was having second thoughts, that maybe she'd realized how cruel she'd been. But the rational part of me knew she was probably consulting with other lawyers, building her case. I was right. The papers were served on a Thursday morning in December. A young man in a suit knocked on my door and handed me an envelope that would change everything. Sarah had filed a petition with the court requesting emergency guardianship over my person and my estate, claiming I was suffering from dementia and was no longer capable of making sound decisions about my care, my finances, or my living situation. Reading those legal documents felt like being stabbed. Every small incident over the past year had been twisted into evidence of my incompetence. The fender bender was described as a vehicular accident caused by diminished spatial awareness and reaction time. My repeated phone calls were obsessive behavior indicating confusion and memory loss. Even my reluctance to move to assisted living was characterized as denial and resistance to appropriate care recommendations due to impaired judgment. She was using my own life against me, but the worst part was reading her sworn statement about my daily functioning. According to Sarah, I frequently forgot to eat meals, couldn't manage my medications properly, left appliances running, got confused about appointments, and showed signs of paranoia and agitation when questioned about my abilities. None of it was true, but it sounded convincing, especially coming from a successful attorney who claimed to be concerned about her mother's welfare. The court had scheduled a hearing for 2 weeks later. I had 14 days to prove I wasn't the incompetent old woman my daughter had painted me to be. I called Jim Harrison immediately. "She's really doing it," I told him, my voice shaking as I read parts of the petition over the phone. "I'm sorry, Margaret. I know this is hard, but we're going to fight it and we're going to win. Can you come in tomorrow morning? We have a lot of work to do." The next 2 weeks were the hardest of my life. Jim helped me organize my defense, gathering medical records, financial statements, and character witnesses. Dr. Williams was appalled when he heard about Sarah's claims and immediately wrote a letter stating that I showed no signs of cognitive decline or dementia. Mrs. Rodriguez agreed to testify about my daily functioning. Even the pharmacist at my local drugstore provided a statement that I managed my own medications responsibly and had never shown any confusion about my prescriptions. But I knew it might not be enough. Sarah was persuasive, and she had the advantage of being family. Judges tend to believe that adult children have their parents' best interests at heart, even when they don't. That's when I decided to take matters into my own hands. You see, I knew something about Sarah that she'd forgotten I knew. something that would make her think twice about pursuing this guardianship case. 10 years ago, when Sarah was struggling to establish her law practice, she'd made some financial mistakes. Nothing illegal, but some very poor investment decisions that left her nearly bankrupt. David didn't know about it because Sarah had handled all their finances and had hidden the extent of their debt from him. She'd come to me, desperate and ashamed, begging for help. I'd refinanced my house and given her $75,000 to save her practice and her marriage. It was supposed to be a loan, with a proper promissory note and everything. But when she got back on her feet, she asked if she could just forget about the loan, treat it as an early inheritance. She was so grateful, so apologetic about having to ask for help, that I agreed. I tore up the promissory note and never mentioned the money again, but I'd kept copies of everything. The original loan documents, the bank records, the emails where she'd explained her financial situation, and I'd never officially forgiven the debt. Legally, she still owed me that money, plus 10 years of accumulated interest. 3 days before our court hearing, I had Jim send Sarah a letter. It was simple and direct. I was calling in her loan immediately. She had 30 days to repay the full amount, which with interest now totaled just over $110,000. If she didn't pay, I would file suit for recovery of the debt, which would become a matter of public record and could affect her law license and her marriage. The letter also mentioned that I found it interesting how someone who owed me a substantial sum of money was simultaneously trying to have me declared incompetent so she could control my assets. A judge might wonder about the motivations behind such a guardianship petition. Sarah called me within 2 hours of receiving that letter. She was furious. "You can't be serious about this, Mom. That loan was forgiven years ago. You told me to forget about it." "I told you not to worry about it," I corrected her. "I never formally forgave the debt. And now I need the money for my legal defense against your attempt to steal my house. I'm not trying to steal anything. I'm trying to take care of you. By having me declared incompetent, by selling my house without my consent, by moving me somewhere I don't want to go, that's not care, Sarah. That's control." There was a long silence on the phone. Then she said something that broke my heart all over again. "Mom, I know what you're trying to do, and it won't work. Everyone can see you're not thinking clearly. This crazy scheme to demand money from me just proves you're paranoid and vindictive. It'll actually help my case." "We'll see," I said, and hung up. But privately, I worried she might be right. Would my decision to enforce the loan make me look petty and vindictive? Would it backfire and actually support her claims that I wasn't thinking rationally? I didn't have long to wonder. The court hearing was set for 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning in January. I dressed carefully that day, in my best navy blue dress and the pearl earrings my mother had given me. I wanted to look competent and dignified, not like someone who needed a guardian. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, and more intimidating. Sarah sat at a table with her lawyer, a sharp-looking woman who kept glancing at me like I was an exhibit in a museum. Jim sat beside me, calm and reassuring, but I could feel my heart pounding so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. Sarah wouldn't look at me directly. When she took the stand to testify, she spoke in that professional voice she used with clients, describing my supposed decline with clinical detachment. She talked about my memory lapses, my confusion, my inability to make rational decisions about my future. She made me sound like a stranger, not her mother. Her friend Jennifer testified too, talking about how much better her own mother was doing since moving to assisted living. The realtor, Mr. Chen, described my house as too large and demanding for someone my age to maintain safely. Even David testified, reluctantly, about incidents he'd observed that concerned him about my mental state. They painted a picture of a confused, declining old woman who was too proud and stubborn to accept the help she desperately needed. And sitting there listening to it, I almost started to believe it myself. But then it was our turn. Dr. Williams took the stand and systematically demolished every claim about my cognitive abilities. He'd conducted a full mental status exam just the week before, and I'd scored perfectly normal for someone my age. He explained that mild forgetfulness was completely normal in adults over 70 and was not indicative of dementia or incompetence. Mrs. Rodriguez testified about our daily interactions, describing how I helped her with her computer problems and how we solved crossword puzzles together every Sunday. The pharmacist explained that I managed complex medication schedules without confusion and often asked intelligent questions about drug interactions. Jim presented evidence of my financial competence, showing that I'd been managing my money responsibly for decades, had excellent credit, and had made sound decisions about investments and budgeting. He demonstrated that I was current on all my bills, had been maintaining my house properly, and had even been saving money each month. But the moment that changed everything came when Jim asked me to explain why I'd chosen to call in Sarah's loan. I looked directly at my daughter for the first time that day. "Your Honor, 10 years ago, my daughter needed help, and I gave it to her because I love her. I didn't expect to be repaid because family helps family. But when she decided to try to have me declared incompetent so she could sell my house and control my money, I realized that she no longer saw me as family. She saw me as an obstacle to getting what she wanted, so I decided to treat her the way she was treating me, like a legal adversary rather than a daughter." I could see Sarah flinch at those words, but I continued. "Calling in that loan wasn't vindictive, Your Honor. It was practical. If Sarah succeeds in having me declared incompetent, I'll need money for my care that doesn't depend on selling my house. The loan she owes me would provide that security. And if she's so concerned about my mental capacity, surely she can understand why I'd want to collect debts owed to me while I'm still legally able to do so." The judge asked me several questions directly about my daily routine, my understanding of my finances, my reasons for wanting to stay in my house. I answered each one clearly and completely, explaining my thinking and demonstrating that I understood the implications of my choices. When Sarah's lawyer cross-examined me, she tried to make me seem confused and defensive, but Jim had prepared me well, and I remained calm and consistent in my responses. The judge took a recess to review all the evidence and testimony. Sarah and I sat in that courtroom for 45 minutes, not speaking, not looking at each other, while a stranger decided whether I was competent to control my own life. When the judge returned, his decision was swift and clear. "I find no credible evidence that Mrs. Patterson is suffering from dementia or any other condition that would impair her ability to make decisions about her care, her finances, or her living situation. The petition for guardianship is denied." Sarah's face went white. Her lawyer immediately started talking about appeals and additional medical evaluations, but the judge cut her off. "Furthermore," he continued, "I'm troubled by the apparent conflict of interest in this case. Ms. Patterson stands to benefit financially from having her mother declared incompetent, which raises questions about her motivations. I would advise both parties to resolve their family disputes outside of this courtroom." It was over. I had won. But as I sat there listening to the judge's words, I realized that winning felt hollow. I'd saved my house and my independence, but I'd lost my daughter. After the hearing, Sarah approached me in the hallway. Her eyes were red, and for a moment she looked like the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. "Mom, I'm sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. I was just worried about you." I wanted to forgive her. Every maternal instinct I had was screaming at me to take her in my arms and make everything okay, but I couldn't. Not yet. "Sarah, you tried to have me declared mentally incompetent so you could sell my house against my will. You painted me as a confused, declining old woman in a court of law. You were willing to destroy my reputation and my autonomy because you thought you knew what was best for me. That's not worry, honey. That's betrayal." She started to cry then, and it took everything I had not to comfort her. "I thought I was protecting you. The house is so big and you're getting older, and I was scared something would happen to you. So you decided to make sure something did happen to me? You were going to make me homeless, Sarah. You were going to force me into a facility I didn't want, sell the only thing of value I've ever owned, and take control of my life. How is that protecting me? I never thought of it that way. I thought you'd be happier once you adjusted. I thought you'd see that I was right." Without giving me the choice to decide for myself, she nodded, unable to speak through her tears. "Sarah, I need you to understand something. I am 73 years old, not 93. I am healthy, competent, and capable of making my own decisions. When the time comes that I truly need help, I will ask for it. But that time is not now, and when it does come, I need to know that you'll respect my choices, not override them. I understand. I'm so sorry, Mom. Can you forgive me? I looked at my daughter, this woman I'd loved since before she was born, and I felt my heart breaking. I want to, Sarah, but trust isn't something you can just apologize back into existence. You're going to have to earn it. That was 6 months ago. Sarah has been trying to rebuild our relationship ever since. She paid back the loan in full, with interest, without any complaint. She's been coming by for visits, but she asks permission first, instead of just walking in. She listens when I talk, instead of waiting for her turn to tell me what I should be doing. The grandkids have been over a few times. Emma, who's 13 now, asked me why Mommy seems so sad lately. I told her that sometimes grown-ups make mistakes and have to work hard to fix them. Jake, who's 8 and doesn't understand the complexities of adult relationships, just wanted to know if I was still going to make chocolate chip cookies when he visited. Of course I am. David apologized too in his quiet way. He admitted that he'd never felt comfortable with Sarah's plan, but hadn't known how to oppose her without causing problems in their marriage. He said he was glad I'd fought back, that I'd shown Sarah that treating people with respect matters more than thinking you know what's best for them. But the relationship between Sarah and me will never be the same. There's a carefulness now that wasn't there before. She's proven that she's capable of betraying me if she thinks she's justified, and I've proven that I won't go quietly into whatever future someone else plans for me. Some people might think I was too hard on her. They might say that she meant well, that her intentions were good even if her methods were wrong. And maybe they're right. Maybe I should have been more forgiving, more understanding of her fears about my aging. But here's what I've learned in my 73 years. Good intentions don't excuse harmful actions. Love doesn't give you the right to control someone else's life, and family bonds, no matter how strong, can't survive betrayal without consequences. I'm still living in my house. I still drive my car, manage my own finances, and make my own decisions. I've made some modifications to make things easier as I age. Grab bars in the bathroom, better lighting, a medical alert system that Sarah insisted on and I agreed to because it was a reasonable precaution. But these were my choices, made on my timeline, not forced on me by someone who thought they knew better. I've also made some new friends. The senior center has a book club that I joined, and I've discovered I enjoy discussing literature with people who have lived long enough to understand the deeper meanings in the stories we read. I volunteer at the local food bank twice a week, helping families who are struggling the way Sarah and I once did. And I've updated my will, not out of spite, but out of realism. Sarah will still inherit my house when I die, but only if she agrees to certain conditions designed to protect any future grandchildren from having their autonomy stripped away the way she tried to strip mine. I want to make sure that the next generation understands that caring for someone doesn't mean controlling them. If you're listening to this and you have aging parents, please learn from my story. Talk to them about their fears and concerns, but listen to their answers. Respect their right to make their own decisions, even if you wouldn't make the same choices. Offer help, but don't force it. And remember that your parents' house isn't your inheritance until they're gone. It's their home while they're living. And if you're someone who's facing pressure from adult children who think they know what's best for you, know that you have rights. You have the right to live where you choose, to make your own medical decisions, to control your own finances, and to determine your own future as long as you're mentally competent to do so. Don't let anyone convince you that age alone makes you incapable of managing your own life. Sarah and I are still working on rebuilding our relationship. Some days are better than others. She's learning to see me as a person rather than a problem to be solved, and I'm learning to trust her again, slowly and carefully. Maybe someday we'll get back to something that resembles the mother-daughter relationship we used to have. Or maybe we'll build something new, something based on mutual respect rather than assumed authority. Either way, I'll face that future on my own terms, in my own house, making my own decisions, because I fought for that right, and I won. And sometimes, when I'm sitting in my garden in the evening, watching the sun set behind the trees that I planted 30 years ago, I feel proud of myself, not for being vindictive or cruel, but for refusing to disappear quietly into someone else's idea of what my life should look like. I'm 73 years old, and I'm not done living yet. If that makes me stubborn, so be it. I'd rather be a stubborn old woman in her own home than a compliant one in someone else's. That's my story. It's not the ending I would have chosen, but it's the one I fought for. And in a world that too often treats aging as something shameful and independence as something dangerous, sometimes fighting is the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for the people who need to learn that love doesn't mean control. If you've stayed with me this long, thank you for listening. Share your own stories in the comments. Have you faced similar situations with family members who thought they knew what was best for you? How did you handle it? And if this story helped you in any way, or if you think someone else might need to hear it, please share it. Sometimes we all need to be reminded that we have the right to write our own stories, no matter how old we get. Until next time, this is Margaret, reminding you to never let anyone make you feel like your life is theirs to control. You're worth fighting for, no matter what anyone else thinks.